Anti-Islamic and anti-Arab hate crimes are on the rise. This should come as no surprise to anyone. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, has reported over 774 incidents since October 7th. And this has culminated in multiple attacks on Americans, both of Islamic origin and Arab origin. The most notable of which was a 6-year-old boy in Chicago that was stabbed to death by his landlord and his mother grievously wounded in the attack as well, leaving the community reeling in what was one of the most heinous attacks against a Palestinian American in recent memory. On Saturday, 3 young Palestinian Americans visiting family during Thanksgiving break were attacked by an, at the time, unknown assailant. All 3 of these young men were, at the time, wearing a kufiya and speaking Arabic, initial reports said. Initial reports from ABC said that the shooter was accosting the men before shooting them, but revised statements by the family say that he did not speak before shooting. The ADC, the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee spokesperson, said that 2 of the men were in critical condition at the hospital, and 1 was due to be released for non-life-threatening wounds. As of today, Monday, the 27th, the shooter has been tracked down and arrested, 48-year-old Jason Eaton of Burlington. The FBI and the Burlington police are investigating this as a possible hate crime. Eaton has pleaded not guilty in court to 3 counts of second-degree murder and is being held without bail. It goes without saying that anti-Semitic, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim hate crimes are on the rise. Americans have been long primed with anti-Muslim and anti-Arab sentiment since the post-9/11 war on terror. As a matter of fact, the first person who was a victim of an anti-Muslim hate crime was not, in fact, a Muslim or Arab. He was a Sikh man. A man by the name of Baldir Singh Sodhi. General American and, let's be honest, Western centrism does not distinguish between Islam, Arab origin, or Sikh. Because of media depictions of people from these regions, like Palestine, like Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran, there is no delineation between these ethnic groups or these different sects of Islam, or even that there are Palestinian Christians and Jews living in historic Palestine and within the broader diaspora. So it comes to no surprise that in the wake of 9/11 that the first man would not even be Muslim or Arab. And in the wake of the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas, American and broadly speaking Western media has been rife with not just misinformation but outright hate speech against both Palestinians living within Gaza and the West Bank, but probably the entire diaspora, and Fox News running with headlines of Hamas and Hezbollah having sleeper cell agents crossing the border with MS-13. All of this is purposeful narrative crafting to try and further dehumanize an already historically dehumanized group, be it Palestinians, Arabs, broadly speaking, or Muslims in general. Recently, the White House came out with a strategy to combat Islamophobia. Yet within that strategy was not listed taking off the nearly 1.8 million Muslim and Arab Americans who were on that FBI watch list for no other reason than having Arab-sounding names. If there was any real effort to combat Islamophobia, the U.S. would not be backing this illegal apartheid state and their ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians within Gaza, and the complete ignoring of the continued crimes against Palestinians within the West Bank. Over 100 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 7th, and thousands have been arrested just in 2023 alone. If the U.S. were serious about combating Islamophobia, they would not be running narratives of every Palestinian child possibly being a terrorist, and would not be justifying the continued bombing of women, men, children, and aid workers living within Gaza. The same types of narrative crafting about young men or military-aged men that are crossing the southern border or are walking the streets of urban and metropolitan areas, possibly presenting a threat. It's hearkening back to not just the post-9/11 Islamophobia, but the historic dehumanization of immigrants, of black and brown folk. If the U.S. was actually interested in curbing Islamophobia or anti-Arab sentiment within their country, these feckless institutions that do nothing other than virtue signal that they're trying stuff, but not really. They would actually be telling Israel to not kill over 15,000 Palestinians. If they had any interest in actually stopping anti-Muslim or anti-Arab hate, it would not simply extend to our borders, which within our borders certainly is not doing anything to stop that, but it would do it abroad, in our vassal states like Israel. At the moment, the 3 young men who were attacked in Burlington have a long road ahead of them to recovery, not just from their physical wounds, but from the mental scars that being attacked simply for being Palestinian, being Arab in general, leaves on a person. This attack on these three men is very clearly a hate crime. Whether or not the Burlington police or the FBI deem it so, or whether or not the judge in this case agrees to that, remains to be seen. But it's difficult to imagine that someone would walk up to three, what are essentially just out of their teenage years, college students, speaking a language they don't understand, ginned up in a reactionary fervor against Arabs, against Palestinians particularly, by right-wing media that is constantly hammering in these narratives that every person involved in this group is a potential terrorist, and maybe they crossed the border with MS-13 to bring fentanyl and Sharia law into the country. We are very much in a post-9/11 era, once again. The only reaction to outbreaks and violence is more violence. The best way to stop this right now is not just to pursue hate crimes against Jason Eaton, who did this attack, but to end this attack on Palestinians within Gaza and the West Bank. Until the apartheid state is dismantled, we will not see an end to this violence. Continuously, the Israeli state and, by extension, the American state are going to justify that violence. It's difficult for Americans, particularly white Americans, to sympathize with people not just outside of their own in-group, their own ethnic group, but with people outside of their country, because they're so far disconnected from the consequences of maintaining not just an apartheid state, but the American imperial project. The best way to stop this right now, the hate and the violence that's being done against Arab Americans and Muslim Americans alike, is to call for an immediate end to the campaign that Israel is doing on the Palestinians, and for a international criminal court tribunal to see to it that those responsible for this bombing campaign and this ongoing apartheid see their day in court and are, if there is a God, convicted, and a one-state solution so that all people within the region have equal rights.